All right, Jodah, we're following up on a segment we'd posted earlier this week on Sam Altman and his ouster from OpenAI. But it turns out in this soap opera of soap operas and this Succession episode in the AI sphere, Sam Altman has been resurrected. The Jesus Christ of AI has returned to OpenAI. What do you think of that?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't seem you seem nonplussed. You don't feel even any reaction to that.
I just feel played a little bit. I
Oh,
feel there's a performative aspect to this whole thing that we probably aren't completely in on. I don't know. I've lost all trust in all sort of news these days, just in
yeah.
general. So, but I just the thing it feel there's
So
an
cynicism.
orchestrated
You're coming at this with a
feel.
lot of cynicism.
Yeah, there's an orchestrated feeling around this, and if not
Oh,
orchestrated, if not orchestrated, and that's probably a heavy word, but there's sort of an insider game. There's a bunch of other
well, that Larry
decisions.
Sommers ended up on the board at the end of the day, kind of intriguing, right? The head, the former, was
Larry
it former head of
Summers,
the
Treasury
Federal Reserve,
Secretary.
Treasury
That's right.
Secretary, and then
Adam
also,
D'Angelo stayed on it. He's still there. And the fact that Microsoft is like, yeah, we don't care. This is still cool. We like whatever's
well,
happening.
see, I think
Makes me,
that's what happened. I mean, Microsoft intervened, is what happened. I mean, they're the ones pouring, I think, $13 billion
a
into
lot of money.
OpenAI. So
Yeah.
basically, what happened, in my opinion, is that by reinstating Sam Altman, which was collapsing to the demands of the staff. Right, the staff kind of apparently revolted. Maybe that's just the narrative they're putting out there. We don't know, but Microsoft clearly intervened. Because initially they were going to hire him, and then suddenly, no, he's back in charge.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
new board that's interim as they look at restructuring, and so I think this is all Microsoft stepping in and saying, "Okay, you got to play by our rules now."
Yeah, yeah. So right, and so the narrative that we're being told is there were these activists sort of board that might have been technically or not technically capable as a board who felt that Sam was doing stuff that was putting the human species at risk. That's the sort of narrative on one end, right? And that they were sort of putting pressures against innovation by saying you're moving too fast.
Well, they
And
were
then
part of the
there's this
effective altruism movement, right?
they're part of
Those
the
two.
effective altruism and other movements too,
And
right?
let's also
And so they're
remember, Sam Bankman-Fried is also a part of the effective altruism movement too. So it's kind of sketch as well.
he is yes, exactly. That's exactly. And neither here. I'm just saying this is a story we're being told. This is one story, right? That they were saying we're not being told, and then there's that side story that the reason they weren't being told everything was because Sam was not revealing all the amazingly new things that were occurring. Like there's evidence. What is it? I just heard recently that they think that he didn't tell them that they're on the verge of basically creating a human being virtually, something like
Well,
that.
yeah, I
And
don't know how. I mean, they're kind of saying that
no,
even
I'm just
scholars are
again.
dismissing that.
I'm telling you, these are our narratives. I'm
Yeah,
not saying these are real. These are the narratives that we're supposed to like have an opinion against, right? And that's
right.
that's the thing. And then you've got this other narrative, basically, that Sam is being thwarted by this group of people who were basically incompetent, that they didn't know what they were doing, and now most half of them are gone. And so then
Well,
there's that narrative, and so there's what are we supposed to glean from? Like to me, there's performance here. I'm not trusing anything that's
Sense
been
and
told to me about
Signal
this.
show where Jodah and Dan will confuse you even more with our cynicism.
Well, what's
We
to know
believe
about
nothing.
this? Right? Right? I am a nihilist. I believe
I,
nothing.
I Gen X nihilism. I think that's the thing. Gen X nihilism, right? We're
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
cynical. We don't believe crap, man.
Believe nothing except I want my ferret. I want my. If you guys
But
don't know
we'll
what
be,
that is, go
wow,
see.
yeah. Big
Um,
Lebowski.
Big
Big
Lebowski.
Lebowski
Yeah,
reference.
Big Lebowski reference. Yeah, so I don't know, man. I just think here. All right, Dan. So here's my final. This is my takeaway from all this crud. Right, key person risk. This is my big takeaway from this. If it's all that's true, whatever, I don't know. The fact that OpenAI was going to collapse because one person, a significant person, was going to leave, that company was at risk in the first place.
It
And I
still
just
is
want
at
to kind
risk. It
of
still
right,
is
and I
at
want to
risk.
bring that up. The notion of companies having key persons, like people that you can't live without. And I think this is a lesson for organizations to understand that concept. It's cool to have hotshot cowboy, cowgirl people. That's part of your brand, perhaps. You can sell on that. But if in reality your system is based on success of them sticking around only, if they leave, then all of a sudden people don't know what to do. Training has to occur. The magic's gone. You're screwed.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
called
I think
being two people focused. It's called being two people.
yeah, so that's the lesson I would take away from anything else, because I don't know anything else. The fact that OpenAI was about to collapse because of one person about to bail, that means that person
That
is
also is a
OpenAI.
narrative. Like that part of the narrative. Do we really know that 500 employees at OpenAI were really saying they were going to walk out, or is that the spin that's being put on the story to support bringing Sam Altman back in? Because that's clearly what Microsoft wanted. I've always seen. I saw this, and like I said that on the last segment that we did on this. I kind of framed this as a struggle for myself between corporate interests and the venture capitalist class interests versus the nonprofit interests, which is more humanitarian focused. And to me, this just shows that the corporate venture capitalist interest won this battle, and maybe have won this war by getting Sam Altman back in.
That's funny. I wrote a note here saying, Dan, your question about that has been answered. I agree with you. I made a note of that myself. That question that's my takeaway.
And
especially because
capitalism always wins. Capitalism always wins, and so
I don't want to say it that way. I mean, that's a possibility.
True.
But the thing here, money, because we live in a system where fiduciary needs are super important to the function of companies today, right? As opposed to happiness? I don't know. And the one thing I read here, there's a board's decision prompted strong pushback from OpenAI's top investors who attempted to intervene. Top investors attempted to intervene and reinstate Altman, but the board picked former CEO. But anyways, so that means money was talking, and money won. And you're right, and that was
money won.
I noted that as well.
And it makes him more powerful in this sphere, in this company, because now he's untouchable. He had said himself that the model that they had in place with a nonprofit governing the company was a great safeguard to protect society from him, from Sam Altman. Those are his own words. So now that we know that model's actually effective. It's not effective. Like, he has full reign. Prometheus has full reign to do whatever the hell he wants to do now. We gave man fire. We gave man language. We gave him auto GPT or GPT 3.5 and 4 and 6 or whatever. Now we're going to give him, true artificial intelligence that's going to displace millions of workers and potentially cause the downfall of humanity. Thank you very much.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
But I do think it also, the other prediction, or not prediction, but my other concern in the last segment on this topic was that this also shows weakness in that model, that tension between the nonprofit and the for-profit. The for-profit clearly won, as we've already established. But is that model sustainable going forward? I don't think the board that they have in place, they're calling it a transition board, and I think that's going to be what it is. I would not be surprised, this is where I'm going to make my prediction, they dissolve the nonprofit part and they just become a for-profit institution if they can figure out how to do that. I think that's probably the next step, because I don't think that tension between the nonprofit and the for-profit is sustainable.
And it's interesting because I read that Sam had already created an entity unto itself, a profit entity, about 5 years ago. I don't know I was trying to find research exactly about the details of that, but I read in a snippet that was already in process. I think the whole nonprofit was a ruse in the first place. Microsoft is going to throw money into it. They expect to make profit. They're not an altruistic. They have they're entrenched. They have fiduciary requirements. They have to be pulling in money, right? They can't go back to the stock market and say, hey, we just made 4 billion people's lives happier, but we're half as rich. It's not going to fly.
And then they march in Larry Sommers, who's kind of like the king of the neoliberals, right? And so what signal is that? This is totally establishment interests at play here.
That's all it is. That's all. And I think it always was. It was all a ruse. It was basically virtue. literally virtue signaling. They had this board that really didn't have really the power to do what they wanted to do. And again, this is where the signals come into play. I would venture to bet that maybe Sam was pushing their levers, pushing them to make them do that so that this would occur.
Maybe.
That's why I mean by an orchestration. What was this? There's something here going on here. Sam's a smart guy, and his other people.
Well,
he
we
might
had
have
talked
been
about that in the last segment
people.
too. How as a leader, you kind of have to be able to read the room to be effective. So he had to know there was tension between what he was doing and the board. It can't have been a surprise.
He probably had developed his alliances. Right, and we're going to talk about influential leadership here in
on
a
different segment. On a different segment,
right?
Yeah.
But he, I think he probably understood he was going to influence in certain areas, and I'm sure he made his alliances with a key like 10% of the audience out there that was like, okay, this is going to happen if shit goes down. Boom. All you need is a solid 10%. That's going to pull in another chunk behind them,
right? And
you've got your audience or your group. So. Again, I don't know what really transpired. We never really will. And it really doesn't freaking matter. But you're right. In the end, money was the ultimate winning thing. And it probably what probably ultimately happened is it allowed them to now basically go gangbusters. Before there might have been some sort of semblance of breakage, some throttling. And now it's like, the throttles are off. Let's go full force. And that's what all this was about.
Put his foot to the floor, pedal to the metal, as they say, right? And go full force into this AI future that's awaiting us. And so the Wired article I read on this brought up some good points about the question of government regulation. I think in this instance, this is gives us solid evidence that the government needs to intervene more on the progress of AI. The European Union is making some strides into addressing AI expansion and should the foundation models, which that's what ChatGPT is. It's a foundation model that other people are building other platforms off of, right? But it's a foundation model. And should those be regulated? That's a question that's going to be debated and is being debated in the European Union heavily right now, and is going to be it's going to be discussed in the U.S. I'm sure. And do we trust these organizations that are creating these foundation models? Do we trust them to self-regulate? That they come up with their own ethical standards that they're going to abide by? Is that something we want?
Do you trust that they do that, Dan?
I don't think I can drop an F-bomb on the YouTube. So I'm just going to say F no.
F no. Fudge no. Yeah, Fudge no. And this is a problem. This is, oh my God, this is so hard. Because again, we're using this term AI, which is really just it's a hand-waviest term you can use.
Yeah.
When really this has been all about automation replacing things that human did, and it started back in the Industrial Revolution.
Yep.
And
there's one article that calls it the fourth Industrial Revolution.
Right. And that's all this is, increasingly so. We didn't have to hardcore answer the question in 1850 because it didn't do that hardcore displacement. We had to start asking the question in the 60s and 70s when automation, people started losing their jobs, and increasingly so. But when you say we're going to regulate AI, really what we're trying to do is we're going to regulate, make sure that people have something to do with their lives. And because otherwise, there is no concept of AI in the classic sense of replacing jobs. I mean, there's large learning models and things like that. But really, we're talking about the automation of what humans can do. And increasingly, it's like what humans can do creatively and things like that. And it's becoming crazy. And so I don't know how government, other than just changing I hate to say it. Well, no, I don't hate to say it. I actually like saying it. Changing the economic model, just functionally changing it. Because the things you needed us to do in the past to do things, increasingly are becoming fewer and fewer.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I hate to say it, I think the signal of putting Larry Sommers on that board indicates that the establishment, who's watching this very closely, they're not interested in changing the economic model.
No,
right?
They're going to win. They're winning.
They are winning. This was a win for capitalism, the banks, the venture capitalist class, and it's a loss for the rest of humanity.
Maybe. It probably is. I mean, but in the short term,
I'm on YouTube. I have to be hyperbolic.
Right. There'll be some cool things that come out of it too. But the questions that we need to have answered about the sustainability of the happiness of human existence that has been severely affected by this decision. Yes, absolutely.
And the other final thing I'll add is the structure of the board on LinkedIn. It's been brought up on LinkedIn. The structure of the board is all white, all male. They lost the 2 women who are on the board were kicked off. And so there's concerns around that, the diversity of viewpoints that are currently on that board diminished with this new restructuring.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But again,
there's an Italian, D'Angelo. I mean, that matters. I know.
Yeah, the Italians are awesome people.
Good food.
Mafia, I love Mafia. Godfather.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's our take, I guess, on Sam Bankman. I keep conflating Sam Bankman-Fried with Sam Altman.
Friedman.
We should just ship them together into a relationship. Maybe if they both go to prison, maybe if Sam Altman does get arrested for something, him and Sam Bankman-Fried could like live in a cell together and have like a relationship, and it could be like a sitcom.
I like it.
It could be a sitcom. Try to come up with a concept premise like that. ChatGPT 3.5.
I like it.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah,
I'll produce it. All right, everybody, that's it for this segment of the Sense and Signal podcast. If you like this conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. What do you think about Sam Altman's resurrection, and should we ship him with Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yeah, tell Dan and I that we're full of shit. You know what I'm saying, or crap,
Watch it,
or say we're spot on. So we'd like to hear from you.
All right, take care.